Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. I didn't think I was going to do another show tonight. In fact, I just did one earlier on whether or not scribes corrupted the text of the Bible. Specifically, we were talking about the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Old Testament and talking about some scribal alterations. And, I thought that would be the only video that I was going to do for the day, but it turns out that, Pope Leo just said some interesting things about a number of topics. And so my Twitter is going pretty wild right now with, a lot of comments that he made. And so we're going to take a look at it. He's certainly shaking things up so far in his pontificate. He is talking about migrants, and it looks like he's maybe taking some shots at Donald Trump. The role of women in the church, and also other religions, and how we can learn about the divine from other religions, as well as other topics. All sorts of stuff is going on right now. So we're going to cover it all right here on the Michael Lofton Show. Double checking to make sure that my feed is live, just because it shows me I'm not live, but I know I hit the live button and it did this to me the other day and told me I wasn't live when in fact I was live. Okay, so I had to double check. I am live. All right, and y'all let me know in the comment section there if you can hear me and see me. He's also talking about synodality. That's also a pretty controversial topic that, there's been a lot of confusion about. I've spoken about what synodality is, what it isn't, whether it has authority in the church or not. Maybe comparing and contrasting Rome's understanding and version of synodality versus the German bishops and their synodal way. We've looked at that for several years now, but he is continuing to spread the synodal process in the church, and we're seeing him offering some commentary on that. So we're going to take a look at that as well. So yeah, a lot going on. But I do want to remind you of something time sensitive here. And you know what? It actually is very much related to what we're seeing with Pope Leo. And that is my lecture tomorrow, 12 p.m. Central, so Saturday, on papal infallibility. These questions about the Pope and, what did he say? And is that authoritative? And is it infallible? And, is this something that is authoritative in the church? And, those kinds of questions, those are certainly fair questions, and they require, a thorough answer. And what I'm going to do is offer a number of lectures tomorrow, 12 p.m. Central, called Understanding Papal Infallibility. Its nature, so what it is, and also what it isn't, so common misconceptions. Its history, where we see it in the first millennium, and of course in the second millennium, and then challenges to the concept of papal infallibility, objections, as well as some potential solutions to those objections. And so whether you're Catholic or not, you just want to understand the concept of papal infallibility, you're going to love this lecture. In fact, it's actually 3 lectures. Now, if you can't attend live, that's fine. There is a Q&A for those of y'all who do. But if you can't, once you purchase access to the course, you'll always have it. But go ahead and reserve your spot now while you have the opportunity to get the discounted price. After tomorrow, it's going to go up. But also, maybe even more importantly, once you purchase the course, then you will get 30% off my magisterial studies program, where I teach you everything you need to know about what the teaching authority of the church is, the magisterium, its history, what it is, and how to read magisterial documents, and kind of how to know, okay, what's infallible, what's not, what's authoritative, what's not, what can the Pope teach on, what does he not have any authority to teach on. We go over that in 30 lectures, 3 courses that I teach at the university level. But if you want to get 30% off the already discounted price, because it's bundled together, when you put all 3 of them together, you get the discount. But another 30% off the already bundled price. That's a good deal, but it only lasts until tomorrow. So take advantage of it when you purchase the lecture for tomorrow. Understanding Papal Infallibility. It's available at rtcourses.com. So go to rtcourses.com, reserve your spot. And let's go ahead and dive in to our topic here. Let's maybe start with the comments that Pope Leo just made about migrants. That's going to be pretty controversial one, in light of things that we've been seeing going on, here in the United States, especially with policies on immigration. Well, here's what he says. And I suspect he has Donald Trump specifically in mind when he says this. States have the right and duty to protect their borders. Okay. So he's not just outright saying, hey, you just have to have open borders no matter what. There's been some comments of his that could be interpreted that way. I guess he's trying to offset that. But, he says, there's always the but. This should be balanced by the moral obligation to provide refuge. So he wants to say it's a both and. You have a duty to protect the borders, but you also have a duty to provide refuge for migrants. With the abuse of vulnerable migrants, we are not witnessing the legitimate exercise of national sovereignty, but rather serious crimes committed or tolerated by the same. So, we're hearing two different sides. Some are saying, hey, here in the United States, we're just protecting our borders. Others are saying, no, we're doing way more than that. We're abusing these migrants. He seems to be going for the latter, saying that abuse is taking place. Increasingly inhumane measures are being taken, he says, even politically celebrated, to treat these undesirables, quote unquote, as if they were garbage and not human beings. Oh, so yeah, this sounds like it's directed to the United States, whether they're fair criticisms or not. It sounds like that's what he has in mind, because this is certainly what the United States Catholic bishops are saying on the question of immigration. And of course, they are advising the Pope on the matter. And of course, he's, from the United States, although he lived in South America for a long time. He himself is from the United States, and he can follow the news in English. And so I'm sure some of these thoughts are, views that he's developed on his own. But I'm also sure some of that is coming from feedback from some of the U.S. bishops. Whether it's good or bad feedback, that certainly can be discussed. But no matter what, he's weighing in on the question. And some people say, well, the Pope needs to stay in his lane. He can't weigh in on politics. Well, in reality, popes have always weighed in on politics. And you can't have that hard line separation between faith, morals, and politics, because really, everything with politics is inseparable from faith and morals. And so, the popes have historically understood that they have a role to address questions in society and politics. And, that actually goes with the lecture that I'm telling you about at RT Courses, the Understanding Infallibility lecture that we're doing tomorrow, which I'm really, really excited about. Does the Pope have the authority to teach infallibly on questions of politics? That's a point to consider, right? So tune in tomorrow to find out the answer for that. And reserve your spot now, rtcourses.com, Understanding Papal Infallibility. Well, these are certainly going to be some controversial comments, and is definitely going to stir things up, to say the least. I mean, it already is. Quite a few political outlets have, weighed in on what he is saying here. Somebody says, say it. We want to hear it. You want to hear the answer? Sneak peek then? The Pope can weigh in even definitively, that is, infallibly, on questions of politics insofar as they touch on a matter of faith and morals. And it's necessary to preserve divine revelation. So if the matter impacts something either divinely revealed or related, logically or historically necessarily related to something divinely revealed, then it is an object of infallibility. He can speak infallibly on that matter. But with those conditions and also the other necessary conditions for papal infallibility outlined by Vatican I's Pastor Eternus, which we're taking a look at tomorrow. So you need to tune into the lecture for more on that. Again, rtcourses.com. Sign up for it and reserve your spot now. Okay, so let's continue here. Let's see. Now, he is talking a little bit about the church in Africa. Then he goes over the church, and not just the church, but other religions in China. And he has some interesting comments to say about other religions. Let's first maybe just start with the comments here on the church in Africa and see what he is saying. We do have video. So let's take a look at it together. Please let me know if there's any difficulty in hearing the audio. I'm going to go ahead and enable it so that you can hear it, and let's dive in. By the way, I want to remind you, I'll hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Okay, let's see.
I think the first word I would like to say, which is not only for the church in Africa, but for all of us this evening, is mission, and to be missionary. The synodal process, as Pope Francis reminded us on numerous occasions, is to help the church fulfill its primary role in the world, which is to be missionary, to announce the gospel, to give witness to the person of Jesus Christ in every part of the world, to the ends of the earth, in the words of the gospel, preaching, sharing, living what Jesus taught us. I think the church in Africa, in that sense, has much to offer to all of us. And what you spoke about, the synodal process helping us to build bridges and how the church can be a bridge, especially in cultures where we as Christians find ourselves not in the majority, oftentimes with members of other religions, whether regional or world religions such as Islam. The challenges that are there, at the same time, great opportunities. And I think that what most of us experienced over the past number of years in preparation for the synod and at the beginning of this new process of implementation is precisely that synodality, to use your words, is not a campaign.
There it is, the concept of synodality. What exactly is synodality? He's not defining it here, but there's been a lot of confusion on what exactly that means, especially in light of, the two rival versions that we maybe have, saying, number one, Rome's version versus Germany's version. But, synodality is a very broad concept. And synodality historically is not necessarily the same as what it is now. Nor can it be conflated with what we call the Synod of Bishops now. There's a lot going on here. But the way he is using the term here and the way it's often used is dialogue, coming together, and all parts of the church dialoguing. Laity, clergy, everyone coming together and offering feedback. That's the idea of synodality. Having an open discussion. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has the opportunity to offer feedback. And the teaching church is listening to the listening church. So the magisterium is listening to everyone else and getting feedback.
It is a way of being and a way of being church. It's a way of promoting an attitude which begins with learning to listen to one another. And the gift of listening is something which I think we all recognize, but which oftentimes has been lost in certain sectors of the church, and something which I think we need to continue to discover in terms of how valuable that is, beginning with listening to the Word of God, listening to one another, listening to the wisdom that we find in men and in women, in members of the church, and those who are searching, that may not yet be and may never be members of the church, but are looking indeed for truth.
So he's saying synodality is listening to everything, listening to what God has to say, what Catholics have to say, what non-Catholics have to say, and everyone else to atheists and what atheists have to say. That's what he's saying there. Okay. There is another part to that, so let's continue.
In the African context, I think that issues or questions, which are both challenges and gifts of youth, if we compare Europe and Africa, one continent continues to grow older and the other is filled with new life and youth and a great gift for the church, the gift of family, and how important it is for the church to reach out to the people as young people and in families to be an instrument for peace building and to offer models both within Africa, among the countries of Africa, but also between the different countries and continents of the world in such issues as promoting peace and the care of creation, among several others. So I think that
So there's the theme of ecology, something that we saw a lot with Pope Francis and are seeing a lot with Pope Leo, which we knew we would. He told us from day one that was going to be his message he was going to focus on. Something you see a lot mentioned by the Eastern Orthodox Patriarch of Constantinople, Patriarch Bartholomew. He's been really big on that. Again, so is Pope Francis, and now that's continuing in Pope Leo. So there's a big emphasis on that. Sometimes maybe even more than other topics like the gospel or the need to convert and stuff like that. Sometimes those messages get overshadowed in these other secular discussions that are not entirely secular. They impact the question of faith and morals, but they're secular as far as where they're originating, where what part of the world is really wanting to hear this message. It's mostly a secular thing, and it appears that the focus tends to be a lot on that and maybe less on spiritual things. Not that, again, they're entirely separable, but you understand what I mean. It looks like that's going to continue under this pontificate for better or worse, whether you like it or not. So, all right, but let's continue.
in this sense, we have to be very clear, we're not looking for a uniform model, and synodality will not come with a template where everybody in every country will say, this is how you do it.
Now, that's interesting. So there's no uniform model to synodality, and maybe even as far as solutions to difficulties. It's going to differ depending on region and nation. But that has its limits, right? That has its limits, because eventually you got to pump the brakes on some of this stuff, like what's taking place in Germany, which unfortunately he has not pumped the brakes on yet. And they're going way off track with some of their stuff on sexuality. So yeah, solutions might look a little bit different regionally, but there's only so much leeway you can give, right? There has to be some kind of standard at the end of the day.
And it is rather a conversion to a spirit of being church and being missionary and building up, in that sense, the family of God. Thank you.
Okay, now on to some other comments here. This is by Catholic News Service Rome. They're pointing out this quote from him, and we're going to see some video for it as well. Pope Leo asked when women and men will be equal in the church. So that's an ordination question, right? When will women be ordained? He says, unfortunately, the way we live out faith is often influenced more by our culture than gospel values. I don't know how to read that. Like, that doesn't appear very clear to me. Because I can read that as favorable to women's ordination or critical of it. That just seems very wishy-washy. That's not a very clear answer, in my opinion. They continue, women deacons is still being studied, which is true. Pope Leo still has the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. Again, studying the question. What's the third or fourth time it's been studied by the dicastery? Women deacons, I think they're going to keep studying it until they get the green light. It is what it is. Women deacons is still being studied, but the equal dignity of women and men is clear and must be defended. So he's very clear. Men and women are equal in dignity. Okay. But as far as the question of women's ordination appears jury is still out on that one, at least when it comes to women deacons for Pope Leo. Jury's still up for Pope Leo. Okay, now we get to some really controversial comments about other religions. Not the first time we've heard this from Pope Leo, or maybe even others like Pope Francis and maybe some other popes prior to that. Yeah, brace for impact on this one.
The first thing that comes to mind is I would like to say thank you to the church in Asia, because if anyone has a challenge because of language and cultural differences and geographical distance and poverty and many, many other realities that you face, to have worked as hard as you have and to have come to where you are today in living this process, not only of synodality, but promoting communion and conversion, I think we all should say thank you and congratulations to you. Dialogue, you said, is essential for peaceful coexistence. And I think that because of many of the interreligious realities that are not unique in Asia, of course, but which are so widespread, and with the exception of the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, Christianity is a minority everywhere. And to face the challenges that come along in terms of living the faith and being disciples of Jesus Christ, including in places where there is oppression and where it is difficult to live the faith, I think that there are many, many things that all of us need to bow down to and to respect the holy ground that Asia is for the present and future of the church. There's a sense of mystery and of understanding of the divine, which is, I think, a part of many of the religions of Asia, that certainly opens the door to different kinds of interreligious dialogue, and I think is of a treasure for the whole church, Eastern and Western, that I also believe is something that is valued by so many cultures in Asia, and that we also, I think, could learn from.
Oh, could learn from. See, that's the part right there that is going to trigger a lot of maybe challenges and difficulties. Vatican II talks about how other religions reflect, a ray of the truth. So they have some truth, some reflection of it. But the idea is ultimately that the church has the fullness of the faith, and these other religions reflect the truth to a lesser degree, some more than others. But it's ultimately the church that is the full light kind of idea. But that there wouldn't be any kind of light or truth in another religion that isn't already, there in the church. So I think what's going to be challenging here is people are going to be left scratching their heads like, wait, what are we to learn from other religions? I thought that the church already possessed the fullness of the faith. I thought the role of the church was to teach, not to learn. See, that's where the challenge is going to be. That's where the difficulty is going to be. Listening, dialoguing, even acknowledging that there are, some degrees of truth in other religions is all fine and logical. But to say that the church could learn implies that somehow the church is deficient in its knowledge and it's gaining the knowledge from the other religion. That's, I think, where the challenges are going to be, and people are going to really struggle with that one.
And because of that, when we talk about the Spirit, when we talk about the spirit of synodality, when we talk about conversation in the Spirit, there's, if you will, a mystical or contemplative element to that perhaps we could continue to discover. And I don't say understand, because I think it's something that goes far beyond understanding, but a contact with the divine that we can all learn, including from many in Asia.
Ooh, a contact with the divine that we could learn from. Wow. So Buddhists, maybe Confucius, maybe Hindus, I don't know. Certainly seems to be saying, Buddhists, right? He's saying Asia. So you're going to have a number of religions there, right? They have a contact with the divine that is a church, can learn from. What contact does another religion have with the divine that one doesn't already have through the sacraments, right? That's going to be where, again, there's going to be a lot of difficulty and challenge for people, right? I'm curious if he's going to at some point explain that more. Maybe we'll find out in what, 3 days. As I told y'all, Pope Leo is meeting with all world religions and is going to have a period where they all pray together silently, and will celebrate cultural diversity, religious diversity, and share testimonies and cultural traditions and all sorts of stuff, kind of like in a CC 3.0. And maybe there we'll hear what his thoughts are, because he's supposed to deliver a general audience after that. And maybe we'll get more insight into what he thinks we are to learn from other religions. So, okay, there's that video. And there is a part 2 here for it.
There are, of course, great challenges. The structural, economical realities that you deal with and the difficulty of promoting even communications on a widespread level because of the limitations of the local churches are realities that I think we too need to share in. I think that this kind of experience of a synodal church, of building communion, needs to inspire in all of us, if you will, a greater generosity and sharing of resources so that we can have perhaps greater equality, greater justice, even in terms of the way that the goods, the material blessings that so many churches have could be shared with others. Obviously, there are great challenges in doing that. There are great efforts being made to do that already, of course, that should be recognized. It's an ongoing process. But I think, again, the people of Asia can offer much hope, and I hope that all of us together can be a sign of hope for the church in Asia. And with that, I simply express gratitude and great reverence for those who are walking together in the church in Asia.
All right. My impression, I don't know if Pope Leo was always this way or if he just picked it up in Rome, but I'm hearing all of the standard Vaticanese phrases: journeying together, accompanying one another, synodality, collaboration, dialogue, all of the typical Vaticanese buzzwords. I'm hearing a lot of that. I don't hear a lot of clarity on stuff that might be more central to the role of the papacy, especially in light of the fact that the house is burning down and we're seeing massive issues right now in the church that are not being attended by either the Pope or the bishops. So, I mean, with all due respect, I hear a lot of this stuff, and okay, there's a legitimate need to address it, but I kind of feel like a lot of this stuff is side issues that should be addressed in the periphery, and front and center should be, I don't know, putting out the fire in the church. It's burning the church down. You quite literally got the German bishops running wild, and you got pride masses and gay masses, and you got, well, unfortunately, Pope Leo allowing gay crosses into the St. Peter's Basilica. You got men urinating on the altar. You got just wild stuff going on. You got bishops celebrating with women priests, celebrating with gay women priests, celebrating pride masses, and a lot of the stuff is not addressed. You got a massive amount of people who are leaving the church, going to Eastern Orthodoxy or elsewhere. I don't know. It just kind of seems like the role of the papacy, first and foremost, is to guard the deposit of faith, to safeguard the deposit of faith, and to be that source of unity. That's number one in Catholic ecclesiology. Then this other stuff of being like a political world leader, that stuff is there, but it's kind of on the side. The number one job description, type stuff seems to be rarely addressed at all. And the kind of side stuff is now put front and center. And we've seen that not just with Pope Leo, but Pope Francis and many other popes prior to that. And, it's increasingly becoming a challenge because the situation is getting increasingly worse in the church. You know, those are my thoughts, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just how I see things from where I'm sitting, and I don't see the entire picture. Maybe I have misplaced values, misunderstandings of the role of the papacy and the bishops and the episcopate, but it sure seems to me like this is just night and day compared to just what the magisterium it says the role of the episcopate and even the papacy is, and what it should be preoccupied and focused on. Dealing with doctrinal issues and doctrinal problems and ecclesial divisions is going to be front and center to the job description of the Pope, not ecology, not immigration policies, not dialogue, not interreligious dialogue, not, all of this other stuff, accompaniment, synodality. There's a role for all these things. There's a need for all of them, but it can't be the front and center main thing that the Pope is preoccupied with. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts that are coming to mind as I sit here and watch through this with you guys. Okay. Let's see what he says here. Let's take a look at this one.
And I think we have to be very clear and sincere about the importance of formation on every level. Sometimes ready answers are given without the proper necessary preparation to arrive at the conclusion that maybe some of us have already drawn, but others are not ready to or capable to understand. And without the proper formation on every level, schools, seminaries, ongoing formation programs, adult formation for laity, et cetera, there are going to be resistances and a lack of understanding. And I think that, at least to a certain extent, we have to understand that we do not all run at the same speed, and sometimes we have to be patient with one another, and rather than a few people running ahead and leaving a lot behind, which could cause even a break in an ecclesial experience, we need to look for ways, very concrete ways at times, of understanding what's happening in each place, what the resistances are or where they come from, and what we can do to encourage more and more experience of communion in this church, which is synodal. So with that,
Speaking of which, the house is burning down, especially with the church in Germany. What's being done there to secure communion with that church, right? All this sounds nice, and just seems like at the end of the day, it's a lot of talk, though. I want to see some action. I want to see some church discipline. I want to see some consequences for the rebellion that's taking place within the ranks of the episcopate right now.
I think that the concrete reality, understanding within the American United States culture, where actually many structures that already exist have great potential for being synodal, and to find ways of continuing to transform them into more inclusive kinds of experiences.
Yeah, see what I'm saying about the buzzwords. Synodal, inclusive experiences. It's just all the same Vaticanese, somewhat liberally. Liberalese, is that a word? Liberalese. We're going to make it a word. It just seems like all of the typical buzzwords. And honestly, I wonder, maybe we need to pull some video transcripts or something. Did Pope Leo talk like this before he went to Rome? I honestly want to know, was he always like this? Or is this something he just picked up in his time there in the Vatican? It would be hard not to, right? If you're surrounded by nothing but this kind of stuff in the Vatican.
Whether on pastoral councils, or whether in other diocesan structures or gatherings, the inclusion of people, men and women, laity and clergy, women and men religious, etc., can all take part and feel very much a co-responsible sense of belonging and of leadership and accountability in the life of the church. Obviously, there are challenges, but I think some significant steps have already been taken, and hopefully that will continue.
Accountability in the life of the church. That sounds wonderful. I haven't seen a whole lot of accountability in the church, frankly, with all due respect. With all due respect. Um, I haven't seen that. Very, very little accountability all around, especially in the episcopate. Oh, that we would actually see accountability. I mean, that would be amazing. It's been the thing I've been harping on for quite some time, the need for that, right?
First of all, allow me to greet Dr. Susan. She and I were members of the same table in the last session of the Synod, and it's nice to be at the same table again with you. Welcome. The brief answer is yes. I do expect, and I hope that the different groupings of churches can continue to grow as expressions of communion in the church, using the gifts that we are all receiving through this exercise, if you will, this expression, this life of synodality. I want to give a very concrete and short example, but to me it was very striking. I was at a meeting recently with a bishop from your region who said that the issue of climate change is so urgent that within less than 50 years, if things continue, my country will disappear. We are enjoying the luxury of sitting around in very comfortable spaces and reflecting on things which at times can perhaps seem very theoretical. But when you hear the urgent cry of people in different parts of the world, whether because of poverty or because of injustice or because of climate change or because of perhaps a number of other causes, we realize that we're not just reflecting on theoretical matters and that an urgent response is necessary. And this is a specific...
I understand ecological concerns about justice in society. I get all it. I understand. I get it. Okay. Regardless of your view on ecology, I understand the concerns, though. I understand. Is there a role for that conversation? Of course there is. Does the Pope have, the right to weigh in on? Yes. But this is something that should be a side issue compared to the front and center role of the papacy, which is, again, safeguarding and transmitting and defending and explaining the deposit of faith. I hear very little about that, and I hear so much about what the world wants the Pope to comment on. It seems very wayward. It seems very out of place. It seems tone deaf, especially when, again, the house is burning down in the church. It's burning down. There's a climate change issue. The house is burning down. There's a climate crisis going on when the house is burning down, right? It's getting really hot in here. I don't know. That seems to me that has to be addressed first and foremost by the Pope. And then, weigh in on some of this other stuff on the side. But I don't know. You got to clean your own house first, right? I can't go to my neighbor's house and tell them, man, your house is dirty. All right, we gotta journey together, and I'm going to accompany you, and through dialogue, we are going to restore everything in your house, and we're going to organize it. We're going to take care of it and all that. Meanwhile, my house is just absolutely a wreck. It would be good to maybe take care of your own before, right? So I'm not saying it's one or the other, either or, black or white. No, it could be a both and, but I just kind of feel like the priorities are off here. That's my impression. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Feel free to disagree with me. If you think I'm just out of touch with reality and I'm just missing it, okay, fair enough. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just wrong. But I don't know. From where I sit, it seems like that's that's a what's going on here.
A case where I would hope that all of us would take very seriously the call that Pope Francis gave to the whole church and to the world 10 years ago in Laudato Si, and said, this too is part of our faith response to what's going on in our world. We cannot be passive. And therefore, I certainly hope that through bishops' conferences, the ecclesiastical provinces, the continental conferences, that we can take up some of these very specific issues and make a difference. And I think the church has a voice, and we need to be courageous in raising our voice to change the world.
I think the church has a voice, and it's totally legitimate, but it seems that voice is missing its primary proclamation right now. The whole bit about the gospel, and not the social gospel, but the actual gospel. That whole message that it seems Rome has really put on the back burner and forgotten a lot about. And that is the need to convert, repent, and believe the gospel. Those things that we see Jesus talking about in the New Testament. Again, feel free to disagree with me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing it. Help me out if I am. Love to hear your feedback. Okay. Let's see. I think there's one more here.
And I think we have to be very clear and sincere about the importance of formation on every level. Sometimes ready answers are given without the proper necessary preparation to arrive at the conclusion that maybe some of us have already drawn, but others are not ready to or capable to understand. And without the proper formation on every level, schools, seminaries, ongoing formation programs, adult formation for laity, et cetera, there are going to be resistances and a lack of understanding. And I think that, at least to a certain extent, we have to understand that we do not all run at the same speed. And sometimes we have to be patient with one another, and rather than a few people running ahead and leaving a lot behind, which could cause even a break in an ecclesial experience, we need to look for ways, very concrete ways at times, of understanding what's happening in each place, what the resistances are or where they come from, and what we can do to encourage more and more experience of communion in this church, which is synodal. So with that, I think that the concrete reality, understanding within the American United States culture.
There it goes again. Concrete reality. There it goes. It's the same Vaticanese language. I can't take it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut it off. But that was pretty much the end of it. Again, a reminder, because this is going to rightly raise the question of papal infallibility. How much of this do you have to buy into? How much of this is infallible versus just mere opinion? I cover all of that tomorrow in the 3 lectures I'm delivering on understanding papal infallibility, what it is, its history and challenges, as well as potential solutions to the challenges. Go ahead and reserve your spot. That's tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central. But if you can't attend, you'll always have access to it. But reserve your spot if you want to participate in the live Q&A at the end and ask me questions. It's at rtcourses.com, and also take advantage of it now because you have 1 day left on. Once you purchase the course, you get 30% off the already bundled price for my magisterium courses, which is an incredible deal. 30% off the already discounted price. Everything you need to know about what the teaching authority of the church is, what is authoritative, what is not, what is infallible, what is not, how to read magisterial documents, to be familiar with all of the ecumenical councils, all the major papal bulls, encyclicals. You want to take advantage of this 30% off while it still lasts. 1 more day left. And so go ahead and sign up, rtcourses.com. Hope to see y'all there for that lecture. It's going to be really, really fun. I know some of y'all have already reserved your spot. Really excited about this, really looking forward to it as part of our monthly lectures that I'm doing. So this one is going to be really fun, and y'all come prepared with your questions. And like I said, it will be three lectures. I originally said two. You're going to get a third. You're going to get more, not less. I'll try to keep it within a reasonable amount of time. We're looking at maybe 2.5 hours, somewhere around there. But like I said, if you can attend live, once you purchase it, you'll always have access to it, and you have a study guide, PowerPoint, Q&A, audio download, all kinds of good stuff. You can't beat it. Go ahead and take advantage of the early bird discount. It's going to go up after tomorrow, so take advantage of the discount on the course itself. So again, it's Understanding Papal Infallibility, rtcourses.com. Everybody hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it if you would show your support for the channel. If you find the content here to be helpful, I need to hear from you. You know, if you like the direction of the channel, or you want to see it go in a different direction, there's a wide range of subjects that I talk about. Just earlier today, I did a question that was more historical and theoretical, and maybe even doctrinal, but more historical, and it was on the question of scribal alterations to the Hebrew Old Testament, namely in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the text of the Bible. So we can get into the weeds and talk about textual criticism and the transmission of the Bible. In one video, another video, we're talking about some aspect of church history. In another video, we're talking about archaeology. And another one, we're talking about what's going on today in the church or in secular news. I mean, it's a pretty wide range of stuff that I cover on this channel. And so there's a little bit for everyone, right? And you might like some of it and not other parts. That's understandable. Again, I cover a wide range of subjects, so it's understandable that some people are going to like some stuff and not others. But if on the whole you've been benefiting from the content, I would certainly appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, drop a comment below, hit the like button, and really consider supporting me on Patreon. That would help tremendously. Patreon.com/Reason of Theology. You'll get access to plenty of extra content, including patron-only videos, as well as patron-only posts. And we're going to start doing, again, our weekly Zoom meetings for certain tiers of patrons who are at the tier that has that perk. I think it's the third tier. Don't quote me on that. Go and check it. Patreon.com/Reason of Theology, or just hit the join button right here on YouTube and you'll get the same perks. You can go through either platform. And of course, there's a GoFundMe, PayPal link, all that good stuff in the show notes. I'd really appreciate your support. If you have benefited from the channel in the past and are currently benefiting from it, let me hear from you. All right, everybody, I will see y'all tomorrow for the lecture on papal infallibility. All right, take care. God bless.